Hello everyone, this is Matt here, and I'll be making a video about some Touch Move Kid drama that happened on December 7th, 2024. I said that on my October 13th list that I'll be making a video about it, and I'm very passionate about it, so let's get right to it. What happened on December 7th, 2024? There was a 4-round Swiss event in Norwalk, Connecticut. In my first round, I got a forfeit win. Second round, I managed to get a win against an underrated 1500, which they should have been a draw. Third round, I drew. Last game, I won, and I ended up tying for first in that tournament. And there was some massive dispute that happened during the third round, within like the first 5 to 10 minutes, between two little kids, possibly about 7 or 8 years old, rated about 1300, over some touch move thing. There's this side touch move kid whom his opponent claimed that he did not say adjust before touching the piece. His opponent called the tournament director over, and that's when touch move kid started to cry immediately. I guess that the piece that touch move kid touched and was forced to move must have put him in immediately losing position. Obviously, Touch Move Kid ended up losing the game, and the tournament director sided against him. And I must say, never adjust pieces after that drama on December 7th, 2024. And I'll be explaining why in the later part of the video. Today I'll be explaining what the touch move rule is. The touch move rule states that in tournaments, if you touch a piece, you have to move it, unless you say adjust before touching the piece. In this position, it is white to move, and if you touch the king, it is especially dangerous, especially because you didn't say adjust. And not only is this a really bad move, but it loses the game immediately. So, maybe touch move kid from December 7th, 2024, touched the king, and then 7 seconds later, realized that it was a blunder, and that he tried to use average steal, saying that, oh, I was just adjusting. But he's forced to move the king because the king has only one legal move. But checkmate, Pastor. Queen goes to e4. The king has no legal moves, and white is simply checkmated. Another important tip is to always look for checks, because, like I mentioned earlier, touching a piece, you have to move it. But black may not realize that he's in check. He might just simply move the queen just to develop, but too bad. The queen has only one legal move, and it is to block the check from the king. Not only is this a bad move, but the queen is just simply lost in the opening. And white would especially win this with accurate play. At least I would if I were playing white. So it's just really simple. Always look for checks, and simply say adjust before touching a piece. But in tournaments where everybody is supposed to be quiet, this really causes heated arguments, because the opponent may simply not hear you by saying adjust. So to avoid this disagreement or dispute, I simply do not adjust my pieces. And I simply hate adjusting my pieces, especially against these little kids. Okay, they will just say, oh, you touched the piece, so you have to move it. But indeed, I was just adjusting. And I do not like to get in these disputes with these kids, and especially I'm really afraid of these little kids nowadays. So, to avoid touch move kids' mistake, I'll just simply don't adjust my pieces, and avoid adjusting my pieces if necessary. But sometimes I have no choice. I may knock over a piece by accident like this, and the piece might be way off center. So if I really have to adjust, I do it after I move, before I hit my clock. So, like this. I adjust, I hit my clock, and then now it's the opponent's move. And the reason why is really the best way to do if you have to adjust the piece before hitting your clock is so it doesn't interrupt your opponent's knitting. And here's my advice. Do not adjust pieces if you do not have to. Just to avoid getting elemental ripped and checkmate bastard. Thank you. Before moving on to the next part about me discussing my thoughts about the touch move kit drama incident, I'd like to mention about some points that I forgot to mention earlier. The touch move rule also applies to your opponent's pieces. If you touch your opponent's piece without saying adjust, and if you can capture it, that means you must do so. But if you cannot, then you're free to select a different move. Same thing applies to your own pieces. If you touch your piece without saying adjust, and if you cannot move it, that means you're free to select a different move. Now I'll be discussing my thoughts about the touch move kit drama. So, I always have to say that there's so many unanswered questions about the incident that I still have to this day. Did touch move kit actually touch the piece on purpose? Did he actually say adjust before touching the piece? Or was he just using that as an excuse to get himself out of a losing position? Well, I don't really know because I didn't see what happened in their game. And also, the thing that makes it really difficult is that there were no witnesses involved. And only the players themselves know the whole true story. But I must say something really important. Usually, the tournament director gives the side who says that they adjust the benefit of the doubt. But Touchmuki was crying very hard as soon as his opponent called the tournament director. So I would say that means he was probably using that as an excuse to get himself out of losing position. But I can't really blame him because he did not really know the rules and he's just pretty young. So I must say that the issue here revolves around trust, whether or not we can give the benefit of the doubt to these players. And even so, if there are witnesses involved, I can't really fully trust them because there are so many types of biases that can be involved, like confirmation bias, reporting bias, or recall bias. So to illustrate my point, the witnesses can know like the opponent, or for example, my opponent, and they may say that, okay, I'm siding with my opponent. And then when the tournament director comes over, then the tournament director would take the witness's word that was used against me, even though it's not fully true. And of course, they'll make the ruling against me. And also, I must say that I promised my father to always keep calm in these situations. And usually, if you're calm, the tournament director would almost always side with you. So, if I were touch move kid, I would not cry very hard, obviously. I would just stay calm. And even so, it's not the end of the world if you lose. And it's just a game after all. And also one more thing that I must add, that I always stay calm, and even if I know that my opponent is adjusting and doesn't say, I just simply let it go. And I don't like to call people out on that. I'll just simply okay, let them play their move, but the only time that I'll possibly call TD or say something to them if it was done blatantly, or if they pretty much picked up the piece and try to move a different piece. And another thing I want to add is that as a kid, I grew up with a social condition called PDNOS, and I was also always perceived as my classmates as being gullible, pretty much believing what people says. But it doesn't really affect me to this day because I know I'm strong-hearted and I have my own judgment, and I'm pretty much calm, and I'm pretty much want to be a nice person, and I always like to respect my opponents no matter what strength and rating that they are. And also, before I end this video, I'd like to give credit to Touch Move Kid and his opponent especially, because I would not be making this video if it weren't for them. Thank you for watching, and I hope to do more content in the future.